Midnight here with another special report. And you ever wonder where the all-American idiom, the greatest thing since sliced bread, comes from? Of course you have. You're not some sniveling beatnik forced to stand in a rusty bread line. But first, a word from our sponsor, Lucky Strike. For help dealing with life's troubles, a hard day at work, a philandering husband, or childbirth, look no further than Lucky Strike. Everyone wants the straight dope on the Swell's thing before sliced bread, but have you ever considered where the expression sprung in the first place? Inventor and engineer Otto Frederick Rohwedder was born in Davenport, Iowa in 1880, the youngest of 4 brothers and a sister. And after graduating with a degree in optics from Northern Illinois in 1900, this egghead decided to become a jeweler. And after plying his trade for a bit, he'd eventually own 3 jewelry stores in St. Joseph, Missouri, the Peoria of the Midwest. A mere 18 years prior, the famous outlaw Jesse James met his end in that same town, which was also the starting point of the Pony Express, and Otto had an ace jewelry business there until 1916. But the young inventor had a dream of becoming the first thing since sliced bread. Otto had begun work on an automatic bread slicing machine while he was still a jeweler back in 1912. 4 years later, he sold his jewelry concern and decided to pursue his half-baked vision full-time. He came close to realizing his ambition, including one prototype that held the bread together with metal pins. But in 1917, a fire destroyed everything and wiped the entire slate clean. It'd be more than a decade before Otto could recoup his losses, but during that time, he experimented with new ideas. And the shrewd hotshot realized that a loaf of sliced bread would go stale quickly, so he began work on a contraption that would slice the bread and package it. In 1927, Otto finally completed his machine and filed for a patent, which in typical Uncle Sam fashion was finally granted 5 years later. And in 1928, he sold his first machine to the Chillicothe Baking Company, which sold its first loaf of sliced packaged bread on July of that same year. But Chillicothe certainly wasn't alone. Another venture, the Chicago-based Long Company, also pioneered the idea of sliced bread in 1928, and there's some debate over which came first. In any case, sliced bread was initially a tough nut to crack, but after the American public warmed up to it, it took off. Customers took a real shine to pre-sliced bread, which ad men touted as the greatest forward step in the baking industry since bread was wrapped. Bread consumption increased, which boosted the sale of spreads and condiments, and probably the American waistline. At about the same time, one of the swellest additions to the all-American sandwich since ham and cheese was about to go national. The year was 1921. The Chinese commies first started mucking about, and the King Goose-Stepper himself took the reins of the National Socialist Party in Krautland. And on a lighter note, the Indianapolis-based Taggart Baking Company debuted Wonder Bread, which took its name when the Vice President for Merchandising Development, Elmer Klein, witnessed a kaleidoscope of color at the International Balloon Race in the Indy Motor Speedway. 4 years later, the Continental Baking Company purchased Taggart, making Wonder Bread a national brand. And when they released their own version of sliced bread under the Wonder Bread label in 1930, it transformed the eating habits of the nation. While there's some debate over the very first sliced bread, the brand to put it on the map and introduce it to John Q. Public was unequivocally Wonder Bread. By 1933, 80% of the bread sold in America was pre-sliced, and the intrepid ad man's original slogan morphed into the greatest thing since sliced bread. Wonder Bread would continue to get the bulge over the competition. In 1939, it had an exhibit on the grandest stage of them all, the New York World's Fair. With the Wonder Bakery exhibit, the Continental Baking Company had a wheat field, the first of its kind in 68 years in the Big Apple. Inside the exhibit, visitors could get an assortment of kicks, including the keenest funny since Max Fleischer.
We are the bakers who mix the dough and bake the bread in an oven slow and work for the Continental.
These days, Thunderheads claim everything is the greatest thing since sliced bread, from the snazziest blouse to the newest televisual program. But just remember that sliced bread was once the greatest thing unto itself. Thanks for joining me for another special report. Be sure to subscribe to my own televisual program. By far, the greatest thing since a baked product was pre-sliced and wrapped up into a neat little package. This is Jimmy Midnight signing off.